1 minus sine squared equals cosine squared x. And cosecant squared minus 1 equals cotangent squared x. So did everyone see that part? Okay, so then the next step is to write things in terms of sine and cosine. So what we have here is we have cosine squared divided by cotangent, which is cosine over sine. And notice that you can do that. If cotangent equals cosine over sine, cotangent squared equals cosine squared over sine squared. So I have this divided by my denominator. Now we do keep, change, flip. So keep, change, flip. The cosines cancel out. If you want to put that cosine over 1, you can. This one right here, if that makes you feel better. We could do it like that. So we're left with just a sine squared over 1 or sine squared. Sine squared x. And a lot of you didn't put the x, and that's okay. I wouldn't mark it wrong. But I do need to see a sine. I need to see a square. And that's it. So I'm going to back up a lot because I kind of introduced you to it yesterday. I know it's frustrating, right? But this is literally the only way that you'll get better is if you try it. You just try it. You have to keep practicing. All right, so let's switch over to verifying. So we'll do one at a time. So I think verifying, and you don't have to write these steps down because I already said that. You want to rewrite things in terms of sine and cosine if possible. But this is what we have. We have cosecant times tangent equals secant. So what I want you to do is show all the steps on how cosecant times tangent equals secant. So go ahead and get started. So we know the end game, which is what makes verifying a little bit easier. I know that my final answer is secant. You have to show me how. How is my final answer secant? So go ahead and get started, and we'll work through it together after the majority of you all have the answer. Cosecant is, so the first thing you want to do is write it in terms of sine and cosine. Cosecant is 1 over sine x. And I'm multiplying that by tangent. Tangent is sine over cosine. You don't need a common denominator to multiply. So that's the first thing I would need to see. The second thing is I would need to see 1 over cosine, because that's what you have when you multiply it. And 1 over cosine is the same as secant. So secant equals secant. So we had to verify. They told us that it was going to equal secant, and we had to verify by showing how it would equal secant. All right, let's do one that's a little bit harder. Now we have to add. Add tangent plus cotangent and tell me how is tangent plus cotangent equal to secant times cosecant. So you're only changing this side to prove that it equals secant times cosecant. Now you're adding fractions, so you do need a common denominator. So go ahead, take a moment and work through that. So what does tangent equal? All right, so sine over cosine. And cotangent is cosine over sine. So we need a common denominator, which means I have to multiply. I'm multiplying this fraction by sine. And I'm multiplying my second fraction by cosine. So what's that? That's going to give me sine squared plus cosine squared all over cosine sine. Because when I multiply a sine times a sine, I get a sine squared. And when I multiply cosine times cosine, I get cosine squared. And because we have a common denominator, we can merge these together and make one single fraction. All right, so where do I go from here? We have an identity, right? The numerator, anytime you see sine squared plus cosine squared, that is the primary identity that we started working with a week ago or so. That equals 1. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So now we have 1. And that's over cosine sine. Now remember I said that if whatever it is downstairs, if you bring it upstairs, it's going to be the sister. So if you have 1 over, so if that's confusing, then I'll split it apart. You can also split this apart and make 2 fractions if this is helpful. You can write it this way also. There's plenty of seats in the front. That's all I can. There's like a whole bunch. It's only 12 people in this class. If we can't see, we can just move on up to the front. Nice little seats for you. Okay, what is 1 over cosine? 1 over cosine is secant. And 1 over sine is cosecant. So we just figured out that if you take this and multiply it by this, we will have secant times cosecant. So we verified that that is actually the case. Oh, I was trying to see. So it's just practicing. So this is homework 9. So go ahead, take out a blank sheet of paper. Homework 9 is due Friday, and I want us to start working on it. So let's look at number 25. So this is number 25. It says cosine multiplied by the tangent plus cotangent equals cosecant. So we need to verify that. And this kind of goes with what we just did, because we just added these together. So go ahead and do that part again. Add those together. Add tangent plus cotangent. Except now we're going to multiply that answer by cosine. So go ahead and work with this for a second, and then we'll work through it. So who made it to cosecant theta? Okay, so we have that, which is what we just did. When you take tangent plus cotangent, you end up with the identity in the numerator. So I had cosine, and that was multiplied by 1 over sine cosine. The cosine canceled, which left me with 1 over sine, and 1 over the sine is the same as cosecant. So we verified that. Okay, we have time to do one more homework question. Let's look at number 26. So number 26 is actually pretty similar to 25. So you're going to keep all the same work in 25. So actually, I'm not going to do 26 because 26 is just like 25. So that's like a waste. So let's jump to number 29 because that's the third question. But I will write the question up for you guys who are. So number 26 is literally just like number 25. But it says the sine instead of cosine is the sine multiplied by cotangent plus tangent. So it's all the same steps that you just did, except now it equals secant. So you can verify that one pretty easily on your own. All right, but I do want to look at 29, and then this will be our last question for today. Question 29 says take the secant of theta minus 1 times secant of theta plus 1 equals tangent squared. So that's a pretty basic one also. So I'm going to go ahead and help you out. What you need to do is make a box and multiply this. If you don't know the pattern, go ahead and multiply these together. So when you multiply that out, that's what you should get. These are going to cancel. So this right here, when you multiply secant minus 1 times secant plus 1, you get secant squared minus 1 equals tangent squared. Okay, this is an identity. So look on your purple paper. I think it's under it's under Pythagorean identity. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's under variations. I'm so sorry. Look where it says variations of the Pythagorean identity. And you'll see that tangent squared equals secant squared minus 1. So we verified that. So tangent squared does equal tangent squared. So we verified it.